Hello, everyone, and welcome to the non-spoiler review for Zack Snyder's Justice League. I'm Joe Fricke, one of the four co-creators of movie Changeup, a show where people, go head-to-head pitching reboots to movies and with weird and crazy rules. But we're doing something a little different. We've never really done a non-spoiler review before. We've done some commentaries, so just trying something out, trying to make some new content. I'm joined by two of my other co-creators. Tristan, why don't you introduce yourself? How are you feeling about Zack Snyder's Justice League going into it?
I'm a big fan of Snyder's kind of universe here. I've been the big defender of this for a while. I went into this nervous because there's a lot kind of riding on this after so many years of build up, after so much hype, and so at this point the stakes are so high. Like this can make or break what Snyder was trying to do with his universe at some point. And at first, I was a little mixed on it, but by the end, I'm coming out just excited to talk about it. I can't wait to hear what you guys think about it. But I went into it kind of nervous. I won't lie.
All right, and Bobby, same to you. What were your kind of thoughts going into it? I mean, we've had like a
Yeah,
year plus build up.
right. I mean, when the whole, release the Snyder Cut thing was going on, I kind of like I followed it as like it was interesting, but I didn't care too much because I loved Man of Steel. The theatrical version of Batman v Superman I found unwatchable, but I did like the Ultimate Cut, but it was still like wasn't necessarily the direction I would have liked to see them go. So I was intrigued going in because I like a lot of Zack Snyder's other work, but I wasn't like super pumped for it, but I was really interested. Um, and yeah, I'll get into what I think of it as we go.
Yeah, I'm kind of the same. I really liked Man of Steel. Did not. I mean, I enjoyed the theatrical version of Batman v Superman, but like, I didn't think it was that good. And then I quite enjoyed and I liked the Ultimate Edition of Batman v Superman. And then the Justice League, as it's referred to, the theatrically released Josh Whedon directed version of Justice League, I thought was just garbage. I watched it once in theaters, and then I'm like, maybe I just had a bad experience because I had a bunch of teenagers in my theater that were talking and walking around, and so I watched it when it was on home video, and I'm like, nope, this movie sucks, and I have not seen it since because it is very, very bad.
Yeah, I didn't get
Uh,
into that in with me for me, but I thought the first one, like the original Justice League, the Justice League, as you're saying, was it was like a Saturday morning cartoon that was terribly edited and like just kind of slopped together. Like I enjoyed some parts. I thought Superman coming back and that whole fight scene was really good and some other stuff like that, but there were some weird jokes thrown in I didn't really like. I thought Flash, his like brunch through line, I thought was really obnoxious and stuff like
yeah,
that. So I thought, and just overall, I found Steppenwolf really bland. So that's what I didn't know if they could make him an interesting villain.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll bring up too that I was not a big fan of the original cut of this at all. I loved Man of Steel. I really liked Batman v Superman. I think it had a lot of flaws, and I think Justice League, the original cut, tried to address those flaws and kind of compensated way too hard with a lot of things. And I think you can tell there's a very big mix of visions in that movie. So that was what I was more interested in of anything. So to see, does his vision really come through in this cut? Is it that much different than the original cut? Just what can this really even be compared to this conglomerate of a weird thing that the original movie was?
yeah, yeah. The first one was very weird. Like looking back, it's like very obvious which scenes were Joss Whedon scenes in the original cut because it's like the whole brunch thing that Bobby was talking about very much felt like the whole shawarma thing and the original Avengers of just like a food reference that's all the way through that's used for comedic effect that it's just like bad.
In the post credit scene too.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It was just so much bad in the original. Just and like this one had comedy and like some of them were like they basically took all of the comedic elements of this movie and put it into the Joss Whedon version, and it somehow did not work in the Joss Whedon version. But like for me, every bit of comedy in the Snyder cut I think worked.
I agree completely, and I think part of it is that they intercut so much of Joss Whedon's humor within, so it made most of the jokes fail because the timing just wasn't right.
Yeah,
Like the timing of the jokes in this of when they would pop up were more character
yeah,
based instead of like a quip, like
yeah,
a quippy based thing. Like the Flash made some funny lines, but he wasn't quipping about things and making random stuff. It was just his character, which
Yeah.
was kind of quirky.
Yeah, basically, like in the original Justice League, all of the characters had like quippy one-liners and were meant to be funny. In the Zack Snyder version, it was really just the Flash and Aquaman and maybe like a little bit of Cyborg.
Yeah, I don't not like you. Like that Batman line was terrible
Yeah.
in the
Yeah, we don't
original.
need Batman to be making jokes when you could be doing action scenes in the more. I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get too much into what he does in this movie, but he doesn't make nearly as many jokes as you would expect if you only watch the Justice cut.
Yeah. Yeah, there was
Yeah.
only I don't want to say it because eventually we're gonna do a spoiler review and we can have all four of us and Johnny can be on. But there was only one Batman line in the whole movie that I did not like, and it's one that's very much towards the end.
I know what you're talking about, and that is the one line that was very Snydery for sure. I'd say.
That I'm just like
Can't wait to talk about it.
I could have done without that, but
Yeah. Why don't we get like our overall thoughts? Like just
Yeah.
like what do you think of this? Like not really a grade, but
I mean,
kind of an overall thing before we dig in a little bit.
yeah, for me overall, I think it's solid. I was talking with Tristan before you got on and before we went on air that I was hoping for like Batman v Superman Ultimate Edition, or like that's kind of where my expectations were, but I was hoping more for like Watchmen level, and I think ultimately it lied like just barely below the Ultimate Edition level for me. I think part of that is the length. Is like as I was watching it, I'm like, a lot of these scenes could be cut, and I don't feel like I'd really be missing much from this story. But yeah, that's just me. Tristan, what about you?
I was expecting about maybe BVS level, maybe a little bit under that. I expected it to be kind of a mess, but just work enough to see the vision of him come together and at least be better than the original cut of Justice League. Please give me just something better than that. And I'd say it was better than that. It really exceeded my expectations. I came out very, very impressed with it. And the more I thought about it over the last 24 hours, the more I've liked it. And I really have come around to think it's possibly one of Snyder's best movies, at least of his DC character movies. So I'm liking it more and more. I can't wait to talk in detail, but I also can't wait to watch it again and kind of get more clear thoughts on it. So I'm loving it. I can't wait to revisit it again and again and just learn more about it.
Yeah, Bobby, what about you?
So I was trying to bury the lead a little bit of how I felt about this, in our group text and everything. So I ended up surprisingly watching this twice yesterday, 4 hours
Christ.
twice.
Yes.
Jesus
Um,
Christ.
I didn't mean to. I watched it once in the morning, and I really liked it. I really enjoyed it. It was long, but it didn't feel that long. And what I meant to do is watch it with Jen, my wife, and just in pieces. Like, okay, we're gonna watch some tonight, some this, and she locked into it and was really enjoying it. And when I put on the original Justice League a few months back, she tuned in and out and was like, "This is really bad." Like, she doesn't really pay attention to movies, and she locked in, so we just kept watching it.
Yeah.
So I love this movie, actually. It's my favorite Zack Snyder movie, I think, as of now.
Oh wow.
It's really and I didn't expect to be the one to come out raving. I kind of expected Tristan to be the one as we get into this that would, kind of be all over it, but I loved it. It felt like, other than a few Zack Snyder moments, which you're gonna get, like I loved as much as I can love a Zack Snyder movie, because I don't love some of his style choices.
Yeah.
With slow-mo in certain moments when it didn't need to be, and a couple lines, but I really, really loved it, and I could see myself rewatching this quite a bit more than most of his other movies.
Oh wow. Yeah, for me, like I feel like if they had trimmed this down to 3 hours, I would be like as hyped about it as you are. But for me, there was just too much of like, this is nothing. Nothing is gonna happen, or it's like an introduction of something that goes nowhere. That like never.
They
gets
could have
paid
given
off.
me 8, and I would have been so happy with it. They
Yeah.
could have been like, "Here's the 16-hour cut," and I would have been like, "Okay, where's the rest?"
Right, and not to get into spoilers, but everyone kind of saw he released kind of chapters, and kind of their title carded that way. The epilogue of this movie, I feel like, is mostly set up to things that aren't probably going to happen now. So realistically, this movie is like 3.5 hours. So you can chop it if you really want and get it to a 2.5 to 3 hour movie and tell a good story and just not have any of the setup, other than like maybe one shot to end it, I believe, like to me. But I still enjoyed all that, and it makes me wish that I did see some of those things come to fruition, which I didn't quite think I was going into this. But Yeah, I enjoyed this a lot. I didn't even like I felt like I didn't even want to take a bathroom break for most of it or anything, and I was just sitting there for 4 hours. So
Yeah, I watched
uh,
I watched the first 3 hours, took an hour nap, woke up, and I watched the final hour. That's how I finished it. Because I had only slept like 5 hours the night before, so it wasn't like the movie, like, oh, this movie's boring, I need a break. It was more like, okay, I want to stay
just
up and watch this, I just
length.
physically can't.
I believe after chapter, I think it's 5, Zack Snyder has a 10-minute intermission in the theatrical version of this. So he
Yeah.
said if it ever comes out into theaters, take a 10-minute break here. So I followed his instructions. I took
I
a
mean,
break there. I grabbed a snack and came back
yeah,
and ran through the rest of it.
and I think timing wise that makes sense if I
Yeah.
remember where that falls.
Yeah.
Kind of as you gear up to something. But
Yeah.
to me, I was really impressed with. I liked a lot of the characters a lot more. I know Zack Snyder's been saying forever that Cyborg was the heart of the movie, and I was
Yeah.
like, yeah, I'm sure he has more to do and he's fine. But I really loved what they did with him and
Yeah.
his kind of backstory they gave him and
Yeah.
explanation. There's a lot of moments in this that made me go, why did they cut this
Yeah,
in the
there's
theatrical?
one very particular scene that I'm like, if they have filmed this, which I assume they did, there is
Mhm.
absolutely zero reason to cut this, and I'm sure.
Was that with Wonder Woman or was
No,
that with?
it was a scene. I
Is
don't
it
want
a
to
scene
spoil.
involving
It was a
some
scene
computer
outside of a
programming?
bank. It was a scene
Yes,
outside of a
I
bank.
agree.
Yeah,
I
yes,
agree.
I agree. I agree with that. Because there's a few of them. That's one. The moment that, like, everyone who saw the 2017 Justice League saw the opening Wonder Woman moment when she is basically facing off against terrorists. There's a moment that ends that scene, and I'm like, that is like 15 to 30 seconds that you could have included. That is just a good character beat
Yeah.
and just like showing something that is kind of like an inspirational kind of moment. And I don't know why they didn't include that.
For
Yeah,
sure.
there's a lot of small things like that. You can see when you watch the original cut. I don't know what we consider spoilers even because this does follow like the
I think
structural
if you,
I
similarities
would
of
say,
the original
yeah,
movie.
if it's in the original, I think we can talk about it. I
Yeah.
feel like as
Yeah.
long as we don't say they changed this, the timing
Yeah.
is different with this or whatever. You
Yeah.
know.
Because what I love so much about this is that it didn't like completely structurally change the entire movie. Because at that point I would be like, well, this is how do you even compare these? But to me, it was like it's that movie, but just done better. It's that movie with the. It's almost like it's a similar script from a better director or something like that. You're seeing the characters ironed out more. You're getting some more kind of individual themes to the characters. They're all having their kind of own arcs. They, especially Cyborg. You guys mentioned he's the heart of the movie, and Ray Fisher. Was getting a lot of hype when he was cast, and there was a lot of excitement for him. And I was kind of let down in the original cut that he was in, a couple scenes. He had a few cool lines, but that was all he really got. And then that character in particular in this movie is like a completely different character practically. They give him so much to do and so much backstory. You can really see the hype around that character, around that actor.
Yeah.
And I agree with Zack Snyder. He's the heart of the film.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, there's one thing I still don't understand, and if you've been seeing like the behind the scenes stuff, I guess for whatever reason Ray Fisher has been against Cyborg saying "booyah," which is like, especially if you watch the animated series, like that character's like the Teen Titans animated series, that character's like catchphrase. There's a scene in the movie where he basically says "hell yeah" the same way he said "booyah," and I'm like, there was absolutely zero reason why he could not say "booyah" in this movie, and I was like, that's just the weirdest thing to hang your head on. Of like, he will not say "booyah."
I thought of that
movie.
exact same thing. Probably that exact same moment. I was like, I understand why you don't want to like cartoonify the character that you take seriously, but there's a line where I was like, you almost could have just inserted "booyah" right here, and it would have been the exact same thing.
Yeah. Was it like in reply to Aquaman? Because that's the moment that
it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, that was definitely something, but I think, and I've heard this explained. I don't want to go into, as a white guy, too much race things, with this, but there is a stereotype of that type of language, especially after, what's his name from ESPN, that died, Stuart Scott.
Oh yeah.
That he kind of used "booyah" and all that, and he became popular for it. But then because of that, media started saying, "Well, that's how everyone who's black speaks." So I think that was his issue.
I always have associated with like '90s like white surfer bro. So
right, that's what I do too. I didn't know that until I heard someone talk about it. I'm like, I didn't even think about that at all of why.
I mean, I
could be
guess
an issue.
that, but like I've just never associated it with like specifically black people.
Yeah.
I've associated it with like surfer bros.
Yeah, same here for sure.
But yeah.
Yeah,
I
no,
think a lot of the characters get a lot more depth and exploration than they did in the original. Obviously, there's a lot more time, but I really think there's just an improvement upon a lot of characters. So, like what Wonder Woman got to do here, I think, especially the entire at the beginning of the original cut, you see Steppenwolf taking out the Amazonians. I think in this cut, it's a much more exciting and thrilling
Yeah.
scene. You're much more invested in the characters and the action. I think things like that kind of define this cut. A scene where you see it in the original, but then it's just not it's flowing through, and this really gets you in the moment and lets you experience that moment.
Yeah, for sure.
yeah, there's
Like,
a lot of things in the action. Or you go ahead first, Joe.
well, I was just gonna say there's so many like scenes that compared to it's the same thing between the Ultimate Edition and like the theatrical cut of BVS and then this versus like the Joss Whedon version of they just took scenes and expanded them out and fleshed them out and made them actually like matter and feel important instead of just like hack them to fit a time constraint where there were so many scenes in like Justice League where it's just like why is this like what is going on, why is this happening, I don't feel connected to any of this just because it was just like
Yeah.
scene.
Yep, and that's what I was going to get to is that there's a lot because it is extended, but they didn't need to cut so much of what they did to make it 2 hours. I think in the first one, like you have a lot more small like character moments within fights that just make you connect to characters
Yeah.
rather than just watching essentially a Transformers fight, like
Yeah.
where it's just a bunch of noise and things clashing and like oh cool
Yeah.
visuals or whatever. But there's moments in the Wonder Woman scene like that. There's a ton of moments. The entire well, I mean, the third act big battle that existed in the Justice League cut is very different, even though it has a similar kind of goal.
Yeah.
And like Flash gets something really cool to do there. I really liked his moment in the third act. I liked they kind of gave everyone something to do.
And they like
Um,
very like quietly like set it up too earlier in
yeah,
the movie.
they did multiple times, especially watching it twice. They definitely set a lot of things up with dialogue, and it's not on the nose. Like you don't know what they're setting up or anything like that. But they, it's like, oh well, okay, he has this thing or whatever.
Yeah.
That comes to play later on.
It is very interesting to see scenes like that were in the original cut of this movie that you now see them presented here just slightly differently, and in that slight change, it gives so much depth to the character. Like Flash, we were talking about, has some scenes like that where we're just getting like slight extensions to small scenes he was in, and just those extra couple lines and the extra couple ways enough to really add depth to the character. It makes you wonder what was that 2 hour line for? Like
Yeah.
2:15, they could have had a better movie than they had just by adding these couple extra scenes.
Yeah.
Right. Like one of the few jokes that I found like was actually legitimately like funny in the Justice League, the original one, was Aquaman sitting on Wonder Woman's lasso.
Yeah.
I like it didn't fit. It wouldn't have fit this movie, but I
No.
thought that was funny. But I would rather have what they gave a little small moment to him that they cut in the original, which is him talking to Flash after a big thing happens with Victor,
Oh yeah.
and
Mhm.
giving kind of Aquaman that it gives him a little bit more humanity because he is just kind of the awesome, drink
Yeah.
kind of, quippy guy in Justice League because they cut a lot of his little character beats.
Yeah, he's the guy who I imagine saying "booyah." Like
Yeah.
if I picture
Yeah.
who's the type of people out there to say "booyah," it's Aquaman. But another thing
For sure.
I forgot about earlier is we said that Batman really doesn't have any funny moments in this movie. It's not true because they did keep his "I'm rich" line from the original,
Yeah.
which is the best line in the original, and it's why it's like the main focus
Yeah.
of one of the first trailers.
So many of the cool scenes from the original, like all the ones I remember being like, well, that scene at least was good. Well, that scene at least was good. And then all of those are just still here pretty much.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I was like, well, everything I gave Whedon credit for was just actually in the Snyder Cut the entire time. And everything I forgot about or didn't like is gone now. It's a fundamentally better version of that movie.
Yep. And one thing I do want to mention is I really felt the score. The first movie, I thought I liked the score because it was memorable because they kept calling back to older movies. Like they have the Batman theme from '89. They have a little hint of the original John Williams Superman theme and that in there. But for this one, I felt the score and the way it's edited plays into the emotion of the movie a lot better, and it's
Yeah.
not distracting. And they also, because of the Joss Whedon jokes, they cut the score a lot to make a joke and things like that. And just this just felt a lot smoother to me, even if it didn't have like a memorable big Justice League theme or something like that.
For sure.
I thought it was well done.
Yeah, the only thing I would say, like, I really like the score too, but I feel like they went to like the Wonder Woman score a few too many
couple.
times. Like she would take a step
Yeah.
and it would start, and it's like, all right, let's dial it back
Yeah.
a little bit
Well,
here. We get it.
well,
She's
because they
Wonder
kind of
Woman.
they gave her kind of a vocal theme that they
Mhm.
use a few times too. So they switched between using that theme and her electric cello theme, which is really cool from her movie. But yeah, that was a little bit overdone, but I like the theme, so it was fine. But yeah, I mean, that's just
I
like
like that
choices.
they gave her that
They
second
made
extra
it.
theme because it really at least breaks up the one single riff that they use for like that one Wonder Woman theme. I feel like when I watched Wonder Woman 1984 recently, it was like every time she walked around the corner, it would be like the one guitar riff from the song over and over and over and over. And it's like, okay, I think you can change it up a little bit. So at least this one had two themes for a lot of the characters.
Mhm.
I will say it's the best character theme of the 2010s. Hot take.
Oh yeah, that's great. It is a great character theme.
If you want
I
to hear
gotta
us talk
think
about character
about that.
themes, we'll be
Oh,
doing
yeah.
a
Yeah,
Mountain Rushmore episode this week.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I gotta finish that. I'm pretty close, but yeah. So I mean, it's hard to get into it without spoilers of why I loved a lot of things. But it's basically, other than Zack Snyder's style taking me out of a few moments, like I don't. This isn't. If people care about this little spoiler, then I don't know what you're looking for. But I don't really need to see a poppy seed come off a hamburger in slow motion. Like
Yeah.
things like that, where it's like that's just trying to be showy and
Yeah.
like
There's
that's whatever.
there was a like a bullet cartridge too that there was like it wasn't like
Yep.
slowly falling importantly. It just kind of fell,
No,
and then
and
we
it
focused
does
on
it
that.
twice. And it does it twice. It happens and it cuts to something else that's happening and it cuts back to the
Yeah.
same bullet falling
Yeah,
again in
you
slow
see it
motion.
go, leave the gun in slow
Yeah.
motion, and then it cuts to something else, and then you see it fall to the ground in slow motion, and it's just
See,
kind
as
of
you guys
Yeah.
are explaining it, I'm already loving it again because
Yeah.
I was so in on this. It's very such a Zack Snyder movie. All the Zack Snyder isms you
Yeah.
expect, like the extreme slow mo constantly, and a lot of the really dark color tones. Although not as dark quite as BVS was, but yeah, it feels like a Snyder movie. I was in on kind of the right of it. If you're gonna be a 4 hour like action blockbuster, give me some weird showy shots once in a while to like wake me up and
Yeah.
keep me
I need,
invested.
and I like it every once in a while. It's just and like I said, I love this movie, so it didn't take me out too much. But there are things that I say, oh, I wish he did it this way or something like that. With
Yeah.
So just the way he uses slow motion, especially when you have super powered characters. I mean, this is kind of similar to how it is in the original Justice League as well, but you use slow motion with all of them, so it makes
Yeah.
when you use it with characters with super speed not as special.
Yeah.
Like I would rather it solely be the Flash has the super slow mo when he's going fast. Wonder Woman is fast, so you have like slow but maybe not quite as slow, and it just shows her reaction time and things
Yeah.
like that. Instead of every action scene with everyone having slow motion.
Yeah, because like, I mean, it's in the Joss Whedon cut as well, so it's not that big of, and I think it might even have been in the trailer, so it's not like that big of a spoiler. But like, it would have been awesome if one of the first uses of slow motion in the movie is when the Flash is running by Superman, and Superman like in slow motion like turns his
Mhm.
eyes and then turns his head. But at that point, half the movie had been in slow motion, so it wasn't as cool.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it's like it still locked me in. I still really enjoy it, but at moments it takes me to a way of kind of
Yeah.
making fun of it in my head of like,
Yeah.
oh, that definitely didn't need to be slow motion. But
Yeah.
still really, the action I thought was great. I thought, uh, like, I didn't think you could make Steppenwolf a good villain, but even by introducing and people know that he's in the movie somehow as Darkseid as a character that exists and he's looming over everything.
Yeah.
I think that and what they did to Steppenwolf's character to tie him to Darkseid just makes him at least have a motivation, and not just a one-note villain. And also, I don't know why they did this, but they had I'm blanking on his name, but the actor who voiced Steppenwolf go
Kieran
and
Hines?
re-record his Kieran Hines. He re-recorded his dialogue in the original Justice League. If you go back and listen to him, he has like a evil British accent type thing that he's doing, and it's not as sinister. I think that was a really bad choice because he is a lot more threatening in this movie.
Yeah.
So I don't really get having to like, go re-record all the exact same dialogue, but not as threatening.
What's the worst Kieran Hines movie? Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance or Justice League?
It's definitely Justice
Probably,
League. Well, it's hard to say because
yeah,
half of Justice League is a good movie, but it's
right.
just presented wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna say Ghost Rider just because that's just kind of a mess of a whole thing. At least there's memorable scenes in Justice League, which are in this one as well for the most part. So
Yeah. Yeah,
All I know is I'm curious to see how the least out of the four of us on this show, Johnny, who's not here, is definitely the least likely to like this movie. He's not a very big Zack Snyder fan
what if
at
he
all,
comes
to
out and
say the
he's
least.
like 10 out of 10?
It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Phenomenal.
I
That would
went back
be
and I watched BVS.
yeah,
Masterpiece.
He's
Perfect
like,
movie.
I watched the Ultimate Edition. I was so wrong on that movie.
yeah,
It's my favorite.
yeah.
Wow,
He
that
refuses
actor's
to
pretty
he
good.
refuses to watch that, and I tell him like I actually enjoy that movie other than a couple like some scenes.
Yeah, that's why
I feel like
I'm not
I
gonna.
feel like that's why I have to talk about this movie. That was like you enjoy it except for like a couple of scenes. So there's always gonna be like a couple of scenes in a Snyder movie that don't necessarily work. I don't want to talk about them necessarily in a spoiler review, but I feel like Johnny might come out with a similar take because I feel almost the same way about this as I did about BVS. It's great if you just ignore like a couple of things that are not great, and whether or not you can look over those things is kind of going to define how you feel about this movie.
Like
Yeah, I'd be
Amira's
curious to
Cockney
see.
accent for no reason.
Yeah, that I was gonna say. Mira's accent's bad. There's a couple of side actors that I think are a little forced on their line delivery, but like overall, it doesn't bother me too much.
Joe, you are the most negative of the people on this podcast, so I would like to get your take on
Like,
what exactly.
Are you saying in general or this episode?
Well, on this cut of this movie, what do you hate?
No, just
about
overall, you're just so negative.
Yeah, we
Joe.
just hate you pretty much.
Yeah.
I mean, why do you explain why you hate?
Yeah,
this
there's
Snyder
just,
Cut?
I
Why you
mean,
hate
it's
all of
hard to
us?
say without like fully going into spoilers, but I think a lot of it is, and I know this was like, I think the basically how your feelings on this is: do you want to see Zack's fully realized, version, or do you want to see the best movie that Zack Snyder could possibly make? And I feel like what we got was Zack Snyder's fully realized version, where I just feel like if they had pared this down to, 3:15, this would have been the best possible version of this movie that they could make with the footage that they had. Because I just felt like we had like 2 Aquaman introductions, like 2 Flash introductions. We had like 2 Wonder Woman introductions. We saw so much of Cyborg early on that I felt like we could have kind of cut down. I just felt, especially like a lot of the first half of the movie, there's a lot you could have cut down on. Like, especially like I don't really need to see a poppy seed falling in slow motion. Or a sesame seed, I guess.
There is a good hot dog moment. I did actually enjoy that.
When that moment started, I'm like, this is stupid, and then when it
So
paid
did
off,
I.
I'm like, oh, okay, I get it now. I'm good.
Same here. Because I'm like, is this gonna be some dumb whatever? But no, that was paid off well.
I'm like, oh, okay, I get it. He had some forethought. I'm in on this.
They do spend quite a lot of time in this movie getting the team like prepared and giving them each a motivation for why they'd be part of the team, but doesn't quickly immediately then get them together. I think that's something that might take some people time to get over. It's like you're not getting the team together from scene 1. You're getting a very, very slow build of why these people are coming together until you're finally seeing them as a team at the end.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah,
and I definitely like how they kind of each all had their own motivations. I don't want to say fully what they are. I mean, it basically kind of stayed from the Joss Whedon version, but I do like that it wasn't just like, oh, Darkseid bad, Steppenwolf bad, we're gonna fight him. I mean, obviously that was part of it, but they all kind of had their own little motivations inside of that I liked. So
yeah, and the only one, like if I were to cut some things, the only storyline of their kind of motivations and some of the backstory I didn't like as much as how it was executed was Aquaman's.
Yeah.
Even though I like generally, if you showed me that, I'm like, that's fine, but it didn't hit me like the other kind of setups. So if you're going to cut things from the beginning of the movie, I get his motivation, so you don't need to show as much as they did, but it still worked. I still liked it.
Yeah, I feel like part of the problem with that is like half of those motivations were like set up for Aquaman, and it's like, well, that movie already came out, so like I really don't need to see this.
They retconned a couple things that like they did. Because this movie didn't exist, they changed a little bit of how Aquaman's may say his parents and stuff. They mentioned.
Yeah, even though people like to say that Aquaman is canon with the Snyder Cut, you can tell when you watch it that it might not be. It's just certain, especially the tone of the character. Aquaman's probably the character that shifts the most in terms of tone compared to between the 2 movies. Like you don't really get the surfer bro, cool guy Aquaman that we're used to seeing from the Aquaman movie and the Justice Cut. He's a much more serious character here.
Mera has a whole different wig.
Yeah, Mera's practically a different character. There's a lot of Aquaman crossover. There's a character.
there's a character in this movie that they mention is dead, but are in the Aquaman movie and things like that, and like
Yeah.
there are little things like that that clearly that wasn't they changed their mind after they didn't release this version.
And Willem Dafoe looked completely different.
Well, he didn't have his man bun,
Yeah, that's true.
basically.
Yeah, because they're like, we
He
don't know how to do his hair underwater, so he has a man bun, and then in like he's just never underwater in Justice League, so he just can have his long hair the whole time.
yeah.
I'm surprised there's not more scenes like that. I was surprised how well this holds together as a movie and doesn't have a bunch of like seams showing where it ends and begins. I know there's some stuff towards the end that I clearly thought like, okay, that wasn't going to be there until you released it at this version probably, but there's not very many seams or very many bad effects that you'd say, okay, they made that not like 5 years later or something like that.
Oh. Yeah, Ben Affleck didn't look as fat and bloated in some scenes. He could definitely tell he had been to rehab in some of these scenes.
Well, because he didn't. I think the only real scene that he reshot, that Ben Affleck reshot for this movie, comes in the epilogue.
Yeah.
And he looks really good. He actually looks skinnier and healthier than he did shooting the original Justice League.
Yeah.
Bring him back for a TV show. Let's restore the Snyderverse after this movie. Come on. Ben Affleck in the Batman show.
That's my thought. Like, after watching it, is like, keep doing your like random one-off movies. We got I assume Matt Reeves' Batman is gonna be at least a trilogy or something. You might have like spin-offs within it, like a Catwoman movie or something. I don't know, but still just do your one-off movies, but move the entire Snyder verse to HBO Max and just do like miniseries like that.
I would love that.
Like the $40 million Deathstroke movie that Warner Brothers decided not to do. Just make that like a 3-part, 4-part, whatever miniseries directed by. It was supposed to be a Gareth Evans $40 million Deathstroke movie starring Joe Manganiello, and Warner Brothers, after greenlighting it, decided not to do it, which makes no sense. Just move it as a miniseries to HBO Max.
Right.
It'd be Johnny. It would make all of the rest of the Snyderverse worth it to Johnny if that happened.
Oh, for sure. He would be all over that. That is one of.
I think that's a good feature for this, because you can tell from this 4-hour cut, like they work well with long periods of time, I guess. Yeah. I think these could be cool. Like, oh, here's a Zack Snyder 6-hour miniseries on Superman or something like that. And you can just give people one-off things like that and still have that one-off kind of structure. Something like Disney's doing for Marvel, like, oh, here's WandaVision, but here's, Cyborg and Aquaman.
Yeah. I think people at this point are adept enough, and like the casual fans are more like adept enough and aware enough that if you have one Batman on HBO Max and then like you have Robert Pattinson Batman in theaters, people aren't going to assume they're the same Batman. Like, I'm watching Superman and Lois on CW right now. No one's thinking like, oh, this is what the like Henry Cavill Superman is gonna like grow up to be. This Superman. Everyone's just it's two different Supermen.
Or even the Flash and that, because for a while they were saying with the CW shows, anything on CW can't be in the movies or vice versa, and they're like, well, never mind.
Yeah, they had a whole like Suicide Squad arc that they cut like right in the middle of.
Cut short.
Yeah, like Arrow was gonna join the Suicide Squad, and then Suicide Squad got announced, and that whole arc just went away.
Yeah, and they killed off like their version of Deathshot or Deathstroke or Deadshot. Because they were going to use him in Suicide Squad, and same with what they did with Deathstroke, because they had plans for him and they cut him from appearing for a while, even though he was the best Arrow villain.
Yeah, for sure.
We did see in Crisis of Infinite Earths last year or the year before that Ezra Miller's Flash is canon with the CW Flash now. There was a crossover there. So I wonder if we'll see in the future.
I will say the multiverse is mentioned in this movie at some point. I won't give any context, but it's spoken. So, it's a couple, but it's in the epilogue for sure. But
that's the part I tuned out, because that's if you were like, Joe, you have to cut 15 minutes out of that movie, I'm like, oh, epilogue's gone. Yeah, fuck the epilogue.
Well, the epilogue, that's set up, and it's stuff that. It's like, it's here, I made it. So, and they definitely it's well known that he didn't originally have the Joker in his version, and that's part of the reshoots and stuff like that. And so there's things in this movie that weren't going to be in it, or they're just setting up because he thought it was cool. And it's like, that works, it's fine, but it's not really part of a structural movie.
And we saw the post-credit scene from the Justice League of Lex Luthor on the boat that comes back. It turns out
Yeah.
at least
Different.
partially a Zack Snyder shoot. That's towards the end of the movie, and I think there's scenes like that where you think, okay, maybe if this came out in a theater, this would have been like a 3-hour movie with a couple of post-credit scenes. But
Yep.
since it's the Snyder cut, he just said, "Oh fuck it, I'm gonna put out the whole 4-hour cut of everything I ever
Yeah.
shot." And I would love to see. I think Joe brought it up before. Like, what would his actual movie be like? Like, if this came out back in the day when it was supposed to come out, and he had like, okay, you got like 3 hours. We're gonna max you out at 3 hours. What do you put out? It could have been very interesting to see just the direction the DCEU could have gone after that, and how people would have responded to it without the context of what a bad Justice League movie is. I wonder if that bad movie coming out made people kind of surprised to see how good this one was. It just would have been very a fascinating what if to change that history.
I'm also curious too, because like this was originally supposed to be like a 4-part miniseries, and then they like looked at the contracts and they're like, well, technically we have to release this as a movie or something like that. So part of me wonders if, and then it's like, because at that point they had already told people it was going to be like 4 hours long. So I wonder if they knew from the beginning it was going to be a 3-hour like straight movie released on HBO Max. If Zack Snyder even still would have just cut it down to like 3 hours.
Yeah.
But because
He
it's like,
might
well,
have.
we've already told people it's going to be 4 hours, so we don't really want to cut it down to like 3:15. So we're just kind of stuck with this long ass version.
Right. Which, I mean, I thought that would be a big problem for me, like it is for you, Joe. And for whatever reason,
Yeah.
this movie flows really well
Yeah.
for me. And even the moments that I feel like they could cut, I enjoyed. I'm like, I would rather see these and experience a 4-hour movie than have it cut down to be a more like streamlined version. But that might be the preference of like the theatrical versions of Lord of the Rings versus the extended cuts, where
Yeah.
both work well. And I think a 3-hour version of this would work really well, but you just get some extra character beats and motivations and like moments.
Yeah. Unless Aquaman taking his shirt off going into the water. But then every time we
Yeah.
see him in the water, he has a shirt on, so it makes no goddamn sense.
Yeah, there's little things like that that are definitely like, give it
Like,
a pass.
it's never like a
whatever.
continuity error where you see him like take off his shirt and then go in the water and then he's swimming with a shirt on. It's just always like he goes into
Yeah.
the water, takes off his shirt, and then every time you see him in the water, like even 3 months later, it's like he's not, or he's wearing a shirt. And
He has his underwater clothes that he goes to find under a rock somewhere. He just
Okay.
yeah.
He has like different like suits stashed under like different corals.
Yeah.
He's
It's
got like a
clearly
berry
this
dresser in there
orange.
and some like sunken ship filled with clothes.
Yeah, he's like, this orange sweater is going to be too clingy when I'm in the water, so I need my water suit.
Yeah, I don't want to delve too much into it because I don't want, like, obviously this is spoiler free, but there is something in Man of Steel that I've thought since I saw Man of Steel.
I know what you're doing. Yep.
And then there was another thing that was in Man of Steel where everyone had assumed Aquaman was the one that saved him from the whales. Or like he was not from the whales, but like the whales were swimming by and then he got like lifted up. I thought like I was just kind of hoping that they would be like, oh yeah, I was the one that saved Superman. Like I've seen him before. Like maybe when they got face to face, he never put 2 and 2 together that Superman's the guy that he saved in the water. And like once he saw him up close face to face, he's like, oh, I've like saved this guy before, but that never happened. So I guess Superman just floated.
Yes,
I mean, I'm okay with that. That would have been a cool thing, but that's something I feel like it would have been maybe forced unless it was like, unless he did recognize him, then it would be something that you could have like a conversation about, like, oh, I did see him once before, or whatever. But
yeah, that would have been a spoiler, but yeah. So we've been at this for like 40 minutes. Anyone have any like more big one question I was going to ask everybody is, who was your MVP of the Snyder Cut, like character wise? Because I feel like pretty much everyone is going to say the same character, but
yeah, I mean, it's Cyborg's the obvious go-to,
Cyborg.
but
yeah, I think Cyborg's a good go-to. I'd make a case for Wonder Woman. I think the Wonder Woman we got here is a significantly better Wonder Woman than the one we got in the Justice League. I think there's some weird shots you can tell if you go back and watch. I did some like side-by-side looking up of scenes from this compared to the Justice Cut, and there's scenes where he literally reshot it just so you can get like one more shot of Gal Gadot's butt in this one scene to make it more sex appeal. Or there's a couple more scenes where Wonder Woman and Bruce have these fight scenes in the original cut where the chemistry is very off, and I think Wonder Woman's character is very consistent between BVS between Wonder Woman and between this. I think it's a very consistent character. So I think if you're looking for more of
Mhm.
what you got from Wonder Woman in that movie, you should check out this one because it's very much a continuous character between those two movies.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'd say like Cyborg is my answer for MVP, but my like runner up, kind of like you said, Wonder Woman is Alfred.
I was
I
gonna say
love
Alfred too.
Jeremy Irons. Alfred is amazing. They nailed his relationship with
Yeah,
Bruce.
there was one line in there that I
Yeah,
mean, it's not really that big of a spoiler, but when like the rest of the Justice League meets Alfred for the first, I mean, I think Wonder Woman had
yep,
already met him, but like Aquaman, Flash, and Cyborg are meeting for the first time, and they're just like,
yep.
yeah, I work for him, and I'm just like,
I know.
and like, I feel like it especially worked for their dynamic in this movie for Bruce to say he works for Alfred, just because it's kind of the dynamic that they do have.
Yeah, and I really there's a moment where Alfred is with Wonder Woman, which isn't that much of a spoiler, but there's a moment where trying to do where she's trying to do something that I thought was really funny and really well done for
Yeah.
Alfred as a character.
Yeah. Yeah, Alfred was like he was like almost like the Nick Fury of this, of just like the guy that's kind of there.
Hmm.
That kind of helps.
Yeah.
And it even more makes me like the one if I could make any change to Batman v Superman, like the overall plot, because I felt like Lex Luthor's plot was too convoluted, that it's basically
Yeah.
Batman is going to fight Superman and Alfred's like, you're going to die. So instead of Lex Luthor being the one that finds all the metahumans, it's Alfred was trying to find metahumans to help Batman fight Superman so Batman didn't die. So he's the one that came up with their logos and found them all. And I felt like with how Justice League was, I think it would have worked better to me if Alfred had been the one that had like found them all. Just with
Yeah,
the
I would have
dynamic
liked
and
that.
everything.
Give me more Jeremy Irons as Alfred.
Yeah.
I think that's really good, and because there's a moment walking off an airplane with Bruce and Alfred that I think is a really good conversation. That's funny, but it's not a joke. It's like it's a true line.
Yeah.
Something about recruiting, and not to get to the line exactly, but that's really
Yeah.
just the dialogue between them I really liked.
There's a scene with Bruce and Alfred that I wanted to point out too, where they're on the airplane. It's one where it starts out with Bruce is shaving, and they have this kind of conversation about his relationship with Diana and their kind of plans for it. And you can see just in between these two versions, you can see where Joss Whedon was like, "Okay, pause here, let's reshoot, and then come back." And there's like a couple of lines where you can tell in the original cut they were like, "Okay, let's give Bruce a quip here because he's not that funny." So we have Alfred give him a line, then it cuts to Bruce giving a quip, but then in this version, of course, the quip's not there, so it just flows a lot better, and you can take Alfred's relationship more seriously with
Yeah.
Bruce Wayne. And I just think you can tell in that scene just the difference between these two versions of the movie.
Yep,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I definitely like the relationship between Bruce and Diana in this movie, where it's like platonic, but you could also kind of
Yes.
see a hint towards, like, it's not necessarily not romantic. Like, I felt like it kind of skimmed both ways. Of like, there was like a platonic
Yeah.
friendship, respect, but there was also like a little bit like when they both. There's a scene where they both like grab a computer mouse and like they kind of like
Yeah, that whole relationship I think changed a lot and was way better in this movie because they made them. Apparently, it was all Joss Whedon that made them very confrontational with each other, and where Bruce kind of throws Steve Trevor in her face and things like that in the old one, and that's non-existent here. And I just found that a lot more true to their characters that we know from the comics or cartoons or anything like that. But just I liked that better than them, at odds with each other.
for sure. Yeah.
She had a lot of really cool moments too. I liked how this movie gives each character a lot of individual moments, and I think my biggest problem with the ending of the original movie, I'm not going to talk spoilers about this one, but I'll talk a little bit about the ending of that one, is that we have this big kind of glowing red finale in this Russian town, and all the characters are in their own places doing their own things, and then they kind of come together at the end. But for this, I think it really enforced, even in the action, why these characters need to fight together to win, why they can't win separately, and why like we need a Justice League, why we can't just have Superman.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I think
because
when you see them fight together, they're very coordinated with their powers. They're all kind of working in unison, so you really see them fighting as a team together. I really like that a lot.
the third act and the other one was basically if Superman shows up at all, we win. And in this one, he shows up in a different way, and it's just played out a lot differently, where you give a lot more characters things to do instead of Superman shows up, beats Steppenwolf.
Yeah.
That's it. Like.
Yeah, it would have helped if they had what I refer to as the Yoda of this movie, because if you watch Empire Strikes Back, Luke goes off to fight Darth Vader, and Yoda's just like, I'm gonna watch. I'm gonna just not help.
Yeah.
I'm gonna just sit here on Dagobah. And this movie definitely has a Yoda that's just like, yeah, I'm not gonna help, even though I definitely could.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's all I'll say about
There's,
that.
and there's a
That's
correlation
another
between the two
problem
of
I
them,
have with
yeah.
this movie, is that there's just someone that could help, and it's like, nah.
We'll talk about that person when we get
Yeah,
to the
that
spoiler review.
I didn't want to bring that one up at all because I have some thoughts, but we'll save that.
I just hinted at it. We have 0
Yeah, if
viewers
you
right
guys-
now, so we're not really spoiling it for anybody. But
Yeah,
I will say,
but-
if you guys have been following the campaign, like you've been following Zack Snyder's Vero account, you've been watching every trailer and every post and every rumor, you've got a lot of what this movie's going to give to you. Like, you're not going to walk away with tons of surprises. So at this point, if you followed all of that, you're getting what you wanted and what we asked for, we've been waiting for, but also at the cost of us kind of already knowing what was coming. So I think if you followed that for all this time, you're kind of stabbing yourself with your own sword. But it was a fun journey. So even if I'm saying stuff that I knew was kind of coming, it was just exciting to see it happen.
yeah,
and I'm happy I did not follow that very closely, like just because I liked it so much, and a lot of it was new to me, other than the scenes that were in the original. So
yeah. Like, me and Tristan both know someone who's like been super invested in this whole thing and has like been all about the Zack Snyder cut. So like that's mostly how I've learned about it. But I've kind of just been ignoring everything outside of that, just because number one, I really didn't care. Like if we were like 2 months out and Zack Snyder was like, hey, so HBO accidentally deleted all the footage, so just
Sure.
Snyder cut doesn't gonna happen, I'd be like bummed for like 20 minutes, and then I'd just be like, whatever.
You
that's
guys
what I
should
would have
find
thought
me
too.
locked in a
and-
hospital somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah, I would have felt that way too, not knowing that I would have liked it as much as I did.
Yeah. Well, at least I never have to watch Justice League again. Not that I was ever
Yep.
going to, but now I really don't have to.
It'd be interesting to watch. It almost feels like this Cliff Notes version of this. Like, you're getting the story beats, but not presented with any of the nuance or any of the interesting parts of it. So it almost is like you could watch this and be like, okay, I can just watch the Justice League and pretend all that stuff is in there.
Yeah.
It almost works.
It's like
But,
you're watching it
yeah.
on fast forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely not going to go back and watch that anytime soon. The same way I don't watch the theatrical cut of BVS. It's like, you have a better version of the movie there, and it's longer, but just like set the time aside and watch it when you want to. And like we said, it's in chapters, so if I want to break it up, I can break it up. But it was definitely worth the ride, worth the 4 hours, worth just the thrill of getting there.
All right. I know, Bobby, you said you got to leave soon.
Yeah, pretty soon. I mean, you know, I think we've pretty much covered a lot of what we
Yeah, I was just
need
gonna
to
ask
cover
if
for
anyone
this.
had any final things they wanted to say and what they would give this movie out of 10. So I know where I'm at on this movie, out of 10. But Tristan, do you got any final thoughts or what you would rate this movie?
I'm so glad that it came out. I was excited to watch it, whether it was bad or great. It would have been just fascinating to see this like unimaginable project happen after so many years of thinking it was a meme. The Snyder Cut actually came out, and it actually happened to be great. So I'm just walking away happy with it. I'm walking away pleased. I'm excited to go back and watch it again. I'm excited to talk spoilers with you guys. I think the spoilers are where we're going to come to a lot of our disagreements and certain choices made. But I'm excited to watch that. I'm excited to watch the Snyder Cut over and over and over again. I'd probably give it like an 8.5 out of 10. It's up there with me right around the Watchmen level.
Yeah, and it's so obviously I love this movie. It's weird to rank this and say like compare it to other, you know, say like The Godfather or other things that are like masterpieces of cinema. But on a scale of, you know, just enjoyment level and how much I really liked it and the epicness and scale of this, I'm gonna give it a 9 out of 10. I love this. It's my favorite. I think it is past Man of Steel as my favorite DCEU movie personally. So yeah, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I thought
I'm
this.
so happy this is happening.
I thought this movie was enjoyable. I thought it was a little long, like I said throughout. I'm a little bit lower than
Take
they
a
are.
pee break, Joe. Get over it.
I thought it was a little low. You know, I'm a little lower on it than they are, and I gave it around like 6.75 out of 10 is where I'm at. You know, felt like we just could have kind of cut out a lot of the fluff. Maybe Joss Whedon isn't his version isn't as bad as we thought, because at least he got his down to like 2 hours. but 2 hours wasn't enough. Somewhere in between, somewhere between 2 and 4.
All right, so we're I mean not all over the board, but it's nice to have some different opinions. I'd be curious to see where our other member of our
Johnny's
show.
gonna come in with I didn't even finish it. It was so trash.
Yeah, but I watched chapter 1. What are these chapters? I'm turning this off. Pretentious.
Yeah.
This isn't a book. I don't want to read. Who reads?
I didn't see the whole picture, so I turned it off.
Yeah.
Like I thought the first title was dumb, so I would stop watching.
It said Batman, and I was like, yeah, that's Ben Affleck. That's not Batman, so I turned it off.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, all right. Thanks for watching. I think it's not going to be too long before we're back with a review of episode 1 of The Falcon and Winter Soldier. So thanks for watching. Have a nice day.